tier list. If you were asked to order from best to worst some of your favourite lifetime experiences, where would you even begin with that? Well, during one of my shiny hunting streams, one of my chat members did exactly that. They asked me for a Pokemon Generation 1 through 9 tier list. Naturally, I couldn't resist. It sounded like a ton of fun, so we did one on the fly during the same stream. And I do think it would make a great video, so I'm going to upload it here in its entirety. I do want to make something clear before we get into the video though. I will be judging each generation as a game first, and in terms of theming and Pokemon design second. So to clarify, I am judging them almost entirely on their functions as a game, and with my personal experiences with them. And you got to remember, some of these games I haven't actually played to completion in years. So please take my tier list with a pinch of salt, because you know, in Pokemon player years, I'm practically dead. Right? I'm 28. Everything on this list can and will likely change with time as my own values change over time, and it is ultimately just a fun little thing to do with chat, so please feel free to share your own tier lists in my Discord, which is in the description, or in the comments, but please don't attack or argue with each other, because we are all Pokemon fans after all. Alright, keep it wholesome, and let's start the video. Starting with, I think we'll start with the bottom. I think we should start with the ones I like least. Before, like, and then build up to the better gens? Or do you think we should start with S and then work down? What do you think? I would probably put Gen 1 in D purely because, not because of the Pokemon designs. If we're like talking generations as in just the game from start to finish, like the full experience, as a game, not as like Pokemon designs, I would put Red and Blue in D purely because of how broken everything is, and I would probably follow that up with Yellow too. I would say they're two of the weaker games in the series. You can add more tiers. We probably won't need more than this. I would say Yellow is probably better than Red and Blue though. If nothing else, just purely because it gets rid of a lot of the trading. Not all of it, but a lot of it. So I would put them in D. What else goes in D? I honestly don't think any of the others do. Because obviously, as you guys know me, I love Pokemon. I wouldn't put a lot of it down this low because they're fun games in their own right. So C tier. I would say D is like pretty bad. I'd say C is okay, B is good, A is great, S is like borderline perfect, like almost perfect. That's the way in my head I'm going for this. So like, as an okay experience, I would say the original Sun and Moon, purely because, in fact, no, I like those games. My problem with these games, it's kind of weird because I want to put like one low and one high, specifically because the first time I played them, I absolutely loved them. I thought they were brilliant, and for those who don't know, Sun and Moon released, and they're like two of the longest Pokemon games made. They're full of cutscenes, full of story. Like, absolute slog to get through, to be honest, with the amount of stuff it forces down your throat, okay? They released the same game again 2 years later, or a year later, with more cutscenes, the same story. They cut big parts out, but they replaced it with just as much filler. So, like, the first time I played it, I absolutely loved it. The second time was grueling. It was miserable. So, like, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are better games, objectively. I enjoyed playing them less because the circumstances of their release was too close to the original games, so it made it a nightmare to play. Sun and Moon are worse than Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but I enjoyed them a lot more because it was my first time playing that generation, and it was like fresh, right? So that's like a really weird one for me. I would put them like this though. Continuing on with C. So, probably Gold and Silver. Purely because the pacing, the way the Pokemon are distributed, the leveling of Johto is weird as so like, it feels like the Pokemon you're fighting are all really weak, and then they get really strong really quickly. It's like half of Johto is useless. Like, filler content, I would describe her as. Does not, I don't know. Johto is one of my favorite regions conceptually, and with like the story, but I can't play the Gen 2 games and enjoy them as much anymore. I would say that Crystal is in C as well, but it's one stage higher than Gold and Silver. Your nuts are on the chopping block? What are you talking about? I think that's fair. Any more for C? Diamond and Pearl, I would put them here. Only because, again, these are games that came out. They have like an optimal version. So like Platinum released, which we'll talk about later. But Platinum released and fixed so many issues that Diamond and Pearl had. So, like, the pacing was pretty bad. I think they added more fire types in Platinum. That might be wrong. But I know that the distribution of types in Sinnoh was atrocious. Things like the health bar ticking down, like, a corpse is counting it for you. Like, nah, dude, it's too slow. Everything about it. And then, not only is it, like, systematically slow, but it's actually slow. They force you through, like, snow biomes where your character is slowed down by snow on a system that barely runs it. So, like, C tier for me. I would say that's probably it for C tier. And you've got to keep in mind, too, you've got to remember, this is, like, considering, I don't know, if you'd have asked me this a year ago, 2 years ago, you'd have got a completely different list. I think I value different things now than I did in the past. So, like, if you'd have asked me this 5 years ago, Gold, Silver, and Crystal would have been way higher. And other games would have been way lower. But this is kind of taken into account, like, me now. And I have no patience for those games anymore. I feel like they expect too much in terms of just, like, my attention span ain't great, right? But I will wait, and I don't mind a slow system. But a lot of this comes down to systematic bullshit. So, like, slow. Like, the whole region feels underleveled, so there's no challenge. I'm not stimulated through it. I feel like I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it. That probably wouldn't have happened in the past. I'd probably have been much more romantic about how much I love Johto. Right, moving up to B. I would say Heart Gold, Soul. I'm only messing. I couldn't even say it. I just wanted to see if anyone would freak out. I would say probably Fire Red, Leaf Green. Fire Red and Leaf Green is probably B tier for me. I don't think they do anything particularly bad. I also don't think they do anything particularly good. I think they're just Milk Toast Gen 1 again. Locking Gen 2 mons behind the Elite Forest Criminal. Yeah, that too. But I really do think that Fire Red and Leaf Green, I loved them as a kid and I have a lot of nostalgia for them. And I like playing them now too. They feel very, like, quick. Very, like, the pace of those games is great because you just kind of run around doing things all the time. The game runs at 60 frames a second, you know, things. It doesn't take the piss with patience. It just, things happen very quickly and I like that. But it's Kanto again and there's not a lot to do in Kanto, which is part of the problem for me. Like, I'm bored of Kanto. I don't really like the Pokemon there that much anymore. There's a lot of good. There's also a lot of bad. I think the region design is weird. But I also have to respect the fact that it is just Kanto, like, but better than these Pokemon down here. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl I'd probably put here too for the same reasons. I would say Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl are, like, okay for what they are, and that's all they are. They don't need to exist. They do, and that's cool. Like, they exist, and that's great. If you want to play Diamond and Pearl, you can on a current gen system with updated graphics, you know, and it's like I don't want to say it's the definitive experience because Platinum exists, which we'll get to, but it's better than the originals, I think. It plays better. I wouldn't say... Maybe sometimes it looks better too. It's kind of whether or not you prefer 2D to 3D on that. But it is nice to have it on a current-gen console. I'd like to see where this sits when the Switch isn't a relevant console anymore, you know? If you ask me for this, again, when the next Nintendo console drops and the Switch is irrelevant, this might be lower. It might be higher. I don't know. It might be lower. I would say next comes probably Legends Arceus. I don't think it's a bad game at all. I actually think it's brilliant. I think it's really, really fun. I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was a nice, new, fresh take on an idea and like a nice new story with using old ideas that, you know, hadn't been fully explored in the past. That's great. I didn't like the new battle system. I liked it at the time, and then trying to replay it, I'm kind of just like, okay, it's a little silly. It's kind of silly. But I love the aesthetic. I love the gameplay. I loved the Breath of the Wild exploring portion of the game more than I liked the battling of the game. I liked running around, finding Pokemon, battling Pokemon, shiny hunting, you know, just in the wild, having a good time and discovering new things, rather than sitting down to explore a dungeon and play a Pokemon game, if that makes sense. And I feel the same way about Zelda too. Like, it's the same kind of feeling of like, oh, that's a great game, but it doesn't scratch the itch in my mind that a Pokemon game does. I would say next is probably... You can set up the battle system so Weavile can do 7 turns in a row. There you go! Look, it's stupid. I would say next probably comes Let's Go Pikachu Eevee. Only because, again, it's Kanto. Maybe I'd move that down to B+, actually. Yeah, that's B. They're really fun, and they're like a nice fresh take on Kanto, and they look nice, and they're harmless, you know? It feels like Pokemon. It plays like Pokemon. The battle system for wild Pokemon's been changed and been made into Pokemon Go, where you use the Joy-Con. I know a lot of people will see that as a bad thing. I think it's great. I think it's a lot of fun, and it breaks apart the monotony of a region like Kanto. So I would say these games are great. I think they're a bit easy. They offer you too much in terms of like protagonist plot armor, but aside from that, they're great. Okay, we're getting kind of high now, and we're going to be counting DLC. Like, the DLC will be included in any of this. So, like, Sword and Shield is with all DLC, and that's the only one with DLC. So that's with DLC included. A rank, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. I don't think I need to say anything there. I think they're brilliant. They're really good. I think a lot of people remember, like, they talk about playing Pokemon as a kid, or at least people my age. They talk about playing Pokemon as a kid, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I played. I loved it. I played it a ton." But what they're talking about is they're talking about Ruby and Sapphire. At least in my experience, like, people played Gold and Silver, Crystal, Red, Blue, and Yellow. They played those, but I feel like when people talk about it and they're like, "Oh, I played it tons as a kid and I loved it," in my experience, they're talking about Ruby and Sapphire. Ain't no way X and Y made it to A. I guess we'll see where it ends up. So yeah, Ruby and Sapphire is brilliant. I think it's great. I played it. No, don't get me wrong. I played a ton of I played Silver a lot. Silver was the game I played like a ton as a child, right? I played Red and Blue, played Yellow. Didn't really vibe with it too much, but I did play it. I absolutely killed my Pokemon Silver. I played it to death, right? But I started growing up out of, like, from child to young adult around the time Ruby and Sapphire dropped. And it's because of that. It's like a really nostalgic game for me. This also dropped like around the same time as things like Pokemon Channel, Pokemon Box, Pokemon Battle Revolution. No, sorry, that's wrong. What was the other one? There was one on the GameCube. I'm misremembering here. I might be misremembering here. But yeah, I absolutely love Gen 3. I think the story's good. The Pokemon designs are great as well. The only thing is I wish I had a day and night cycle. Next for A is X and Y, and I wouldn't put it above Ruby and Sapphire. X and Y, it's a contentious game. I think a lot of people are really mad at X and Y, not because of what X and Y is, but because of the precedent X and Y sets. If X and Y had been released in its exact, if like the game itself released as it was in 2D, everyone would absolutely love it. Everyone would absolutely love it, and I have no doubt in my mind that would be true. The reason people dislike X and Y is because it's aged like milk, right? They've used the same models since X and Y until current gen, right? They released in 2013, so that's the same Pokemon models. Lifeless, boring, like, ugly Pokemon models for 10 years. They've only just now started fixing them. Yeah, I think X and Y gets a lot of flack. I think it was good for what it was, right? I don't think it redefined Pokemon, but it did bring Mega Evolution, which, okay, it was a regional gimmick. It was a regional gimmick that kind of they just dropped. You think it's one of the most bland Pokemon games? Nah, I don't agree. I think X and Y is loaded with personality. What do you mean? I think Mega Evolution was fun. I think given a second set of starters, even though it was nostalgia baiting, I think it was cool. It was fun because they tried to do things like this in the past, right? This is what they rag on it. You give your second set of starters. That's stupid. That's nostalgia. Like, yeah, it is, but it's also good. It's also like a good idea because Gen 5, which we'll talk about, yeah, they gave you your starter, and then based on the starter you picked, you were given one of the elemental monkeys, right? And if you're a new player, right, you can take that monkey to cover your weaknesses, and then that encourages you to build a strong team, right? To cover for your weaknesses. X and Y did that, but they gave you a Gen 1 Kanto starter, right? And everyone loves the Kanto starters. People who want to talk about it, nostalgia baiting, you didn't have to use any of it. It was never forced on you. It's not like they put it in your party and you can't remove it, right? The region was, I will agree that the region was kind of narrow. There wasn't a lot of room to explore, but what was there in terms of Pokemon design, things like Pokemon Amiibo being introduced, which is still around, by the way, Mega Evolution, which set the precedent for regional gimmicks, which affect battle for like however long they do. That all started with X and Y, and I like where that led. I like the fact that we got Dynamax, and I like the fact they tried terrestrialization, because It puts a new spin on an old format, and that's something Pokemon desperately fucking needs. And it started with X and Y. And I'm prepared to sit and say that that's a good thing. They're fun games, they're harmless, you can play them on the go. It's a shame that they're kind of ugly, and they're a little bit bland. I don't disagree with that. I think you're a little right, but you're also kind of wrong. I would say next is probably the remake. I actually think the remakes of Gen 3 are better than the originals. Which is probably another wild one. That's probably another little wild one. I think Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are more fun to play than Ruby and Sapphire.
I agree.
I think they're more fun in a lot of ways. But for the same reasons that I spoke about with X and Y. But also because when I talk about ORAS, the first thing that comes to mind is the soundtrack. Every time. I'm like, bro, they didn't have to go this hard, but they did. And not only that, I know they didn't give us the Battle Frontier. That's terrible. We should have had it. We should have had Delta Emerald. Would have been sick. But they did give us the Delta episode. We did get a bunch of like event Pokemon. We got to fight Deoxys in a story mission and catch it. Because you never got to do that in Ruby and Sapphire. That's cool. That's hype. You got to fly into space on Mega Rayquaza. That was fun. You got to fight the Primal Pokemon. New Megas are introduced. It was fun. It was really, really fun. And I think genuinely, up until very recently, it was my favorite time in all of like my life. My favorite time for Pokemon was around ORAS it was around ORAS, I would say. Because we'll talk about these other Pokemon games soon, but ORAS was so good and so much fun that I was depressed after it finished. After I was done with it, I didn't know what to do. X and Y was really cool when they came out, and I still think Megas are the coolest gimmick. X and Y aged better it aged better than people give it credit for, I think. They're really fun to just sit and play. Like any Pokemon game is, but I think X and Y... I will also say the rivals in X and Y aren't great. The rivals are pretty lame. But I'm not going to knock it down a block because of that. And what I would probably do is I would move Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon to above X and Y. Because I do think Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are really good too. A tier. A tier, A tier, A tier. Is there a single A tier game left? Yeah. Now, do I like Scarlet and Violet more than I like ORAS? Now, there's a question. I would say I probably do. Probably. Yeah, I'd say I probably do, but I'm kind of torn on that one. I think you already know how I feel about Gen 9 so far, since we've talked about it a lot. I don't know, there's something about it. Something about Gen 9. Like, it added a bunch of features I really liked, but it also just feels so unfinished. It feels so... In fact, I am going to knock it down. As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to knock it down, like, to here. Because I do like it more than X and Y, but it just isn't a complete experience. May I ask what those features are? I mean, it doesn't have a post-game, for one. The post-game doesn't exist. The story was brilliant. The story was great, right? I do think that the freeform aspect of the story was, on paper, a good thing, but they could have taken that in a different direction, in a better direction, if they'd been given more time. So with me, when I played Pokemon Violet, I experienced the gyms out of order, which I know most people did. Most people went through this game from like Gym 1 to Gym 3 to Gym 6, and then, like, at the time it feels great to just be able to do what you want in whatever order, but then coming back afterwards and going, this is Gym 2, and their Pokemon are level 15, and you're level 60, doesn't feel good. I feel like I've robbed myself of experience, of gameplay, you know? I could have gone through a nice, well-doctored, systematic curve, developed, and this was designed to be experienced in this order, and it's going to be a good experience. Or they can do what they did and give us, like, complete quote-unquote freedom, but it's not, because the gyms don't scale with you. So you understand what I'm saying? Some of the things people think they did in Gen 9 were actually added in Gen 8. I liked the freeform. I liked the world being open. I liked the overworld Pokemon that you can see shiny. I liked most of it's aesthetic. I liked the legendaries. I liked the people. I liked the region. I thought the game was great until I finished it. And as soon as I finished it, I was like, well, I'm done. And by finished it, I mean finished the story. You know, I don't think it's wrong of me to expect that a game that's $49.99 where I'm from, maybe $59.99 where you're at, has something to do after you beat the story. Like that's not, and it's Pokemon, so it's not difficult. You're not gonna be hurting to finish the story. You're just not. $79.99. There we go. So like, for the as much as I love it, and like I love the Pokemon, I love the region, I have too much to say to the ulterior, you know? I have too much to say in the opposite direction. Alright, should we just pull the band-aid off and put it there? Should I just pull the band-aid off and fucking put it right there? Okay, let's see. Everyone go ahead, react. I'm gonna take a drink. Just hold on a minute. It'll be like that Kermit meme. Ah, the band-aid. My wound was still fresh. I'm sorry. No one even reacted. Everyone just gone silent. That's worse. I've alienated everyone. Or they agree silently. So the thing is with Pokemon Sword and Shield, people are going to call me an apologist. Sword and Shield, yeah, it will always hold a personal place in my heart too. Now let me explain. Sword and Shield was released unfinished, right? We had Dexit, which I know a lot of people got really mad about. They took a lot of Pokemon away. Yeah, Dexit. They took a lot of Pokemon away that people really wanted to use, and they set the precedent that from this point forward, you can't use every Pokemon you catch in every game you catch. They then introduced Pokemon Home, is it? Pokemon Bank? The thing you pay for. To say, okay, you can put your Pokemon in here, but you have to pay a price, right? To keep them there. All super gross, right? They then released the DLC for Sword and Shield, which cost extra, added a ton of Pokemon back in, that they were like, nope, you can't have those back. And they were releasing content like that should have been in the base game, right? So everyone completely and like 100% fairly was upset. Like, that's fair. I get it. I get it. However, it's a shame the game's fucking great and fun and brilliant. And like, it's just great. It's just great. I loved it. I had such a fun experience. With the DLCs on top of the base game, it's so much fun. I know a lot of people didn't want to buy it for like business practices. That is fine. I'm not here, like, it's not a politics thing, right? You're allowed to dislike the game. It's like, that's fine. However, it introduced a lot of Pokemon that I absolutely love. Like Grimmsnarl came out in Gen 9. We got Big Shield Dog. Love Big Shield Dog. Phalanx came out Gen 9. I'm just saying. I will say the starters, pretty terrible. Region design, kind of terrible. Wild Area was great, which kind of set the precedent. Oh, sorry. Set the baseline for Pokemon Violet and Scarlet's world. No Pokemon game is DLC besides the new ones. Kind of dumb. No, I agree. But judging it on, like, with the DLC included as one experience, super fun. Dynamax, oh my god. Raid battling, Dynamax Adventures, all that stuff was so much fun. Hatterene, yeah, exactly. Overworld Pokemon were reintroduced in Sword and Shield, sorry. Amazing. Genuinely really, really good. However, I do think that people are right to be mad at it. I'm not going to dispute that. For me, it's one of my favorite Pokemon games, and it brought me back to Pokemon. One of the reasons I even started streaming Pokemon again was off the back of Sword and Shield and how much I loved it. It got me back into the trading card game, which are like, you know, I know this is all proper consumerist. Oh, I'm now buying their stuff again, and I'm now watching their stuff again. Like, yeah, and I love it, and I had a great time with it, and I'm glad I did it, and I know it cost a ton of money, and I know I shouldn't support it, but it brought me a lot of happiness, and I'm glad I did. And if you didn't get that same happiness, then you're absolutely within your right to say, I don't want to support that. Like, that's fair. However, Sword and Shield, both begin with an S. That's all I'm saying. Both begin with an S! Now we're down to the contentious 5. What order do these go in? Emerald goes next. I would actually put it lower for me. I would say Emerald is the definitive way to play Gen 3. We all know it. It's honestly one of the best ways to play Pokemon, period. I think it still plays well today. You had the full Battle Frontier to play around with. All the legendary side quests to do. You had the 3 Reggies with the Braille. That's brilliant. Oh, regional forms. We didn't even talk about regional forms. Holy shit, they're great too. But yeah, Gen 3, I don't know. There's so much to say. I remember games being $20 to $40. Now you got to spend like $100 plus. That's two things, I think. Because $20 to $40 in 1990 was probably a lot more money than $20 to $40 is now. You know, you have to account for inflation too. I don't really have a lot to say about Emerald because I do think it's brilliant. I do think it's great. It's better than Ruby and Sapphire in almost every single way. In fact, probably every single way. Yeah, the Battle Frontier is great. We all know it. The pixel art's amazing. The game looks and plays great. Soundtrack, amazing. The setting, brilliant. Pokemon, brilliant. Amazing. I would say next comes Black and White. and that goes right there. The original Black and White from 2010. This is another one of those games that well, how can I say this? I played Pokemon. I played every single Pokemon game on release ever since I was a child till I played every single Pokemon game on release up until like Sword and Shield, I would say. When Gen 5 released, I was on the end of my Pokemon hype. I was getting bored of Pokemon. So when Gen 5 released originally, I bought it with this expectation of like, I'm buying this almost out of like, not of necessity, but you know, like, what's it called? I'm buying this not...
Obligation?
Kinda. Like, I've bought every other game on release, so I'm buying this one out of...
Obligation.
There's another word. I don't know. Principles? I don't know. I basically bought it out of obligation, yeah. Okay, so I bought it thinking I'm going to play this, I'm not going to like it that much. It's just going to be a Pokemon game, I'm going to finish it, I'm going to be done with it. Because I was kind of burning down on Pokemon. I was getting a bit older. I think I was with my first girlfriend at the time. And we bought it together. And I was like, we could play Pokemon together, it'd be fun. And oh my god, it was amazing. Like, not even just for a Pokemon game, it was brilliant as just an experience. The new setting was great. I'm glad they limited the Pokedex for the main story, so you could only catch Gen 5 Pokemon. Because it meant, as someone who likes to look through the decks and say, I'm going to use this and this and this, I was kind of just like, holy, what is all this? I'm going to use that guy, and I'm going to use this guy, and I'm going to use this guy. And I used all these random Pokemon and built this team. And I had a great time with it. Then we had this anime story where you're fighting the other guy. You know? Like a 1v1 anime battle with dragons. I'm there for it. The soundtrack's good. Oh my god, don't even get me started on the music in Gen 5. All the little nuances in Gen 5. Don't even get me started on Gen 5 because I'll never stop. But the seasonal system was amazing. The online trading system was amazing. The online battling system was amazing. They changed weather, so teams with weather were nuts. They had all these crazy new Pokemon that they introduced. Loads of new legendaries. Events. You had Pokemon like Meloetta. They were giving away Pokemon like... I remember going out to our version of GameStop. And they're like, hey, we're giving away shiny Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina. You want them? You got to come back today, tomorrow, and the day after. I'm like, I'm coming back twice. I went with my game and my partner's game. I'm like, put them on both. They gave me both. And then I took her game and traded the Pokemon to me. So I had 2 copies of each. She never knew.
Wow.
And Gen 5 was just so good. It's brilliant. And then you've got like the bridge with the people, and when you talk to them, it adds music. They were musicians and they were all sad. And then you talk to them, and they're like, when you talk to them, their music gets added, their instrument gets added to the soundtrack. So, like, the guy with the guitar starts playing guitar along with the soundtrack in the game. And then when you talk to them all, you meet the woman who sings, and then this game starts singing at you. Bro, what the fuck? Gen 5 was peak Pokemon. Peak Pokemon. And then somehow they made it better with the sequel. Somehow they made it even better. That's the best Pokemon game ever made, baby. And I ain't hearing nothing about Heart Gold, Soul Silver. I know I skipped a few, but I had to. Gen 5 sequel is, and forever will be, I think, in my mind, the definitive Pokemon experience. No questions asked. They added the Pokestar Studios, which was a little silly, but I loved it. They added the hidden abilities and what were they called? The secret hideouts, where you could go in and hit Pokemon with their hidden abilities if you could find them, and they were hidden in the trees and shit. That was fun. They added the Pokemon World Tournament, where you could battle gym leaders from every single generation, Elite Four from every single generation, champions from every single generation, with original remixes of all of this in the same sound fonts as their original games. Brought up and made into like fucking HD and on the DS, and it was absolutely wonderful, and it was amazing, and I might cry. Like, it was the best. The artwork was to die for too. You're right. She's spitting facts. Oh my god! And then Pokemon Fusion, it was just amazing. And the trailers coming out where you could see it all, and you got to re-experience Unova, which that might be a bad thing for some. I thought it was great, but they added new areas and whatnot, and then you had the Black Tree Hollow and the White Tree Hollow. They were cool, and there were shinies everywhere. Like, that was fun. The Double Grass, which was a lot of fun. So you could EV train easier in the wild. That was in both Black and White and Black and White 2. Love it. I do genuinely think they're the best Pokemon games ever made. Right. So now I've got that on my system. Where do I put this? Where does this go? Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Heart Gold Soul Silver is one of the most fun Pokemon games ever made, and it's one of the times you can tell that the developers were absolute 100% passionate about what they were making. There was so much in it. I think it is too. I think it is my second favorite Pokemon experience. The problem I have with the reason it's not number one, and the reason I debated putting it under Sword and Shield, and I'll explain this now. The reason that I'm kind of torn on where to put it is because I've played it so many times. I've played it so much. I've played it to death, right? I'm bored of Heart Gold Soul Silver because I played it so much. And like I know that's like suffering from success, right? I played the best Pokemon game too much. They get punished for being too good, and that's it. That's it. I feel like I'm kind of torn because I have worn those games down in my mind because I've played them too many times. The follow-up Pokemon was brilliant. Yeah, like a VHS played too many times. Exactly. Like, I'm kind of bored of the movie, but I did love it to the extent that I bored myself of it by watching it every... You know what I mean? Anyway, the follow-up Pokemon was brilliant. The region did carry over a lot... a lot of its original flaws, though. I like the Pokemon levels and the trainer levels, and it did feel kind of like you can just walk through Johto very easily. Like, that's still there. The Pokewalker, though. Why does no one talk about the Pokewalker? Iconic, bro. Nah, the game's amazing. They added in a ton of legendaries as events. They had, like, you could go to the Sinjove Ruins, and you could battle Arceus, you could battle Rayquaza, you could battle Kyogre, Groudon, etc. All these Pokemon just randomly there. Like, have fun. There's a ton to do. Regigigas, I think, was there too. I don't know. That was I don't know what more I can say. The game's genuinely brilliant. For a lot of the same reasons the Black and White are brilliant. The Pokewalker, I remember, and listen, this is a very romantic, like, nostalgic memory of mine. And it's the same partner I was just talking about where I bought Pokemon Black and White with, who I bought Pokemon Black and White with. My very first, like... Was it my first job? I think it was my first job. We got our first job together. It was delivering leaflets for a carpet company. And all they did was they gave us a big stack and said, just post these through people's doors. So we bought Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, right? We would play it. We would take our Pokemon out into the Pokewalker. And then we would go and do that little like job where we delivered leaflets with the Pokewalker. And we'd be catching Pokemon along the way and like, hey, look what I found. Hey, look what I found. And then we'd go back. We'd put them on our games and we'd play and trade and battle and just... Bruh. What a game. Platinum. Platinum goes here, I think, for me. Actually, no, I'd say it goes here. Platinum fixes a lot of the problems I had with Diamond and Pearl and adds on... I'd say it improves on almost everything that Diamond and Pearl tried to do and tried to be, to the point that it's the definitive Sinnoh experience. No questions. Things like adding in the distortion world as well. Being able to catch N's Pokemon, by the way. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. Get the fuck... Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, being able to catch N's Pokemon at the end, that was hype. But I'm not gonna change it. I'm not gonna change it. I think, again, this is based on my current standing with Pokemon. I think there was a time when I liked Black and White more. But as I've gotten older, Black and White 2 kind of just is the better game. Like 100%. I would say that's my definitive list. That's where I'm at. There are some you could probably wiggle up and down a little bit based on my mood. Like, honestly, maybe Arceus could be higher than Let's Go. Matter of fact, Arceus is better than Let's Go. Yeah, I would say that's right. I think that's pretty much perfect. I don't think I'm gonna get better than that. But yeah, that's my take. I want to see what you all said. I do think you could tell which games I spent the most time in because they're the ones I talked about the most. There are ones you could probably wiggle up and down. Like, maybe there's a day when I want to play Gen 3 over Gen 6 and, like, these two would switch. Do you think there's any here that's unfair? Do you think I've been too hard on some of these games? That was a lot of fun, though. Thanks, Jack. That was a great idea. Oh, God, what's happening? Look at this. This is all you watching me. This is the audience. Like, hey, no, I actually think Gen 7 is stinky poo-poo.